Hi everyone, I'm Sharon and welcome back to my YouTube channel. In today's card making tutorial, I'll be using some older die sets from my stash that I have not touched in a long while to create two quick and easy to make die cut wedding cards. I hope this tutorial inspires you to create similar cards using word and shape dies that you might have in your stash. Without any further ado, let me briefly share with you the dies I use to create these two cards. I use the word die With Love from the Cuttlebug Sweet Sentiments die set, the word die Mr. and Mrs. from the Cuttlebug Words of Encouragement die set, the Cuttlebug 5x7-inch Cross My Heart Embossing folder, the Sizzix Framelits Circles die set, the Sizzix Framelits Circles die set, and the Sizzix Framelits Regal labels die set. Remember, you can use whatever word dies and shape die sets that you have on hand at home. In this video, I will create both wedding cards at the same time. The square envelopes I use measure 6 by 6 inches, so my card base has to measure smaller. I decide to make my card base measure 5.5 by 5.5 inches. Here I use some heavyweight accent opaque 120-pound cardstock measuring 5.5 by 11 inches. I scored the cardstock at the 5.5 midway mark on the 11-inch side. I do this for both pieces of cardstock to create two card bases. Since my envelopes are 6 by 6 inches, I could create card bases that are 5 3/4 by 5 3/4 inches. However, I decide to make my card bases only 5.5 by 5.5 inches to accommodate for the added dimension on my card front. In Canada, regular mail that is under the measurement of 6.1 inches does not require any additional postage. This may not necessarily be the case in your home country. To avoid the additional postage costs, simply create a square card that is smaller in size. I have some lovely wood grain patterned cardstock with some pink hearts. This will be the card front for my first card. I want there to be an 1/8 of an inch border around the card base, so I cut the card front down to 5 1/4 by 5 1/4 inches. For the second card, I cut a textured piece of light pink cardstock down to the same 5 1/4 by 5 1/4 inches. For this pink cardstock, I decide to use an older embossing folder from my stash to add some texture to the card front. This embossing folder leaves this gorgeous pattern of scattered hearts. To highlight the dimension of the embossed hearts, I ink blend some Kitsch Flamingo Distress Oxide just to the edges of the panel. The middle of the panel will be covered up with die cuts. Next, I cut two strips measuring 1.5 by 5 1/4 inches, one from the pattern cardstock and one from the plain pink cardstock. Here is a look at all of the die cut pieces I need to create my two cards. I die cut With Love 3 times in white, light gray, and dark gray cardstock. I used some silver sparkle cardstock for the scallop circle and light pink cardstock for the smaller circle. I die cut the Mr. and Mrs. also 3 times in the same 3 colors. I used some pink sparkle cardstock for the larger Regal label. I die cut a smaller Regal label in gray, and later I die cut that third light pink Regal label in an even smaller size. Here is a quick look at all of the cardstock I have cut down to size for the cards. Now I begin to assemble card number 1. First, I adhere the card front to the card base. Then I add the strip that I embossed with the same heart embossing folder. I use my grid mat to help me align and center all of my elements before I adhere anything down permanently. For the pink circle, I use some mixed media adhesive because I want to ensure the paper adheres to the sparkle paper. Next, I layer the white die cut sentiment under the gray die cut sentiment for some added dimension. Then I adhere the dark gray sentiment die cut in an offset manner so that it appears as though there is a light gray shadow beneath. I placed foam tape on the sentiment because I want it to be the focal point of the card and for it to stand out. And now card number 1 is done. Now on to card number 2. I adhered the embossed light pink card front onto the card base. Next, I glue the sparkly pink strip that I cut out off screen. I add a second, slightly smaller strip with the mixed media glue once again so that it adheres well to the sparkle cardstock. I use the grid on my mat once again to help me properly center and align all of my die cut pieces. I adhered the gray Regal label on top of the sparkle and the light pink Regal label die cut on top of the gray. For the Mr. and Mrs. sentiment, I also layered the gray sentiment die cut on top of the white one for some added dimension. Then I adhere the dark gray sentiment in an offset manner too, so that it has a light gray shadow effect as well. I also place foam tape on this sentiment because it too is the focal point of the card and I want it to have the most dimension. And now card number 2 is also done. Here is another look at the cards as they are removed from their 6 by 6 inch square envelopes. There is a lot of space on the inside for a personal handwritten message to the recipients. I hope that you are able to look in your own stash to find some word dies and embossing folders that you can use to make these quick yet elegant looking wedding cards. Thank you so much for joining me in this card making tutorial today. If you enjoyed this video, kindly hit the like button and subscribe to my channel. I hope that you will join me again next time. Have a great day, everyone, and happy crafting. Bye-bye.